Do you ever feel like something's missing? Even when you're surrounded by people, you're not alone. And in today's video, we're going to look at the subtle but powerful signs of loneliness and why so many men are facing this silent struggle. I'll break down the subtle signs of loneliness, the social and cultural causes, and the historical shift from community to isolation. One of the primary signs of loneliness is emotional disconnection and numbness. And so many men can experience a sense of disconnection from themselves and from others. In their relationships, can feel like there's just something missing. Maybe they're not feeling fully seen and understood in their most intimate connections. And it leaves a sense of desiring for more, because we're social creatures and we thrive off of connecting with other people and being seen for who we are, being able to share the depth of experience in my life, not just the details of what's happening, but the depth of how things are impacting me and where I'm struggling in my life actually leads to a massive source of connection with the people around me. And this wasn't something that I had actually fully understood until I started doing it. And the second I allowed myself to be seen more fully in who I am, sharing the parts that I didn't even love myself, the more I started to feel seen and honored and understood in my connections. And it created a positive feedback loop for me. The same kind of cycle can happen in the opposite direction. The more I try to portray like I have all my shit together all of the time, I'm going to create a deeper sense of dissatisfaction, a deeper sense of not feeling fully seen, not feeling fully understood in my relationships, which will cause me to withdraw and pull back even further. Another common and subtle sign that men are facing loneliness in their lives is they are seeking distractions to avoid their emotions. Men, myself included, often turn to distractions like being busy with work or gaming or substance abuse to avoid feeling the depth of what's going on and avoid sharing that or allowing other people to see what's happening in their lives. These distractions will serve as temporary fixes, but they won't address the root cause of the problem. And so while I might find momentary relief while I'm gaming or scrolling in social media or being hyper-focused on my work, there will continue to be this nagging sense that claws back. And sometimes it will even come back harder after I did that thing, because some part of me knows that I'm avoiding a deeper issue. It's important to develop a deeper sense of discernment between what is a healthy habit and what is a harmful distraction. Some ways to be able to help identify this is a healthy habit will engage you with a clear sense of purpose and fulfillment, while a harmful distraction will be an escape from stress, discomfort, or responsibility. A healthy habit will leave you feeling energized or accomplished, while a harmful distraction will lead to feelings of guilt, dissatisfaction, or emptiness after you do that thing. A healthy habit can be balanced with other responsibilities, while a harmful distraction will take you away from your priorities and most important tasks. Some great questions that you can ask yourself to reflect on when you're trying to discern between a healthy habit and a harmful distraction are: does this activity bring long-term value and fulfillment? Do I feel drained or energized after doing this thing? Am I using this as a form of avoidance or procrastination? And is this in alignment with my values and goals? So many men, again, myself included, can rely heavily on being busy, on being hyper-productive as a means of masking a deeper sense of loneliness, a deeper sense of unfulfillment, a deeper sense of disconnection. And a great way to get a pulse check on this and see if that's actually happening in your life is to carve out intentional times of doing nothing, leaning into making space in your calendar where you're not doing anything. There's no productive measure of what you have to do, whether that's sitting back and reading a book or taking time to just sit out and be in a park and enjoy the sun, or going for a walk with no earbuds on or anything else, and to reflect on what's coming up at that time. If negative emotions or challenging emotions are being stirred up, and these are things that in your day-to-day busyness you're not facing and you're avoiding, well, that's an indicator that you are relying on busyness and this hyper-focus on productivity to avoid these deeper underlying emotions that need addressed in your life. Another critical and subtle sign of loneliness is feeling feeling unimportant in our friendships and social circles. This can give us a sense that our presence doesn't really matter. Men thrive when they feel like they have a sense of value and contribution that they're bringing, and when they're feeling recognized within their families and broader social circles for this contribution. In fact, one of the leading indicators of men who are committing suicide is the fact that they don't feel like they are contributing, like they are of value. So if you're noticing that you are feeling impotent or like you're not in contribution, be mindful of this and notice if there's a pattern here where you are self-sabotaging and withdrawing, or recognizing that you are not feeling in contribution to something bigger, because that is generally a big red flag of an internal struggle that's happening. And when unchecked, it can lead to intense mental health issues and even suicide for many men. This can be particularly heightened when going through major life transitions, like making a career shift or losing your job or going through divorce or moving somewhere far from your existing community. Be particularly cautious of what's happening within you when you're moving through big life transitions, and do your best not to withdraw and pull away in these moments, but really reflect on how you can be in contribution and be more vulnerable when you're feeling a sense that you're not of value, when you're not in contribution or being recognized for these things, and start to think of people that you could actually trust to open up to about this shameful inner dialogue that's starting to arise. Let's look at some of these social and cultural causes that lead men deeper into loneliness. There's often a pressure placed on men to be self-sufficient and stoic and have their shit entirely together and be able to take care of everything on their own. And if they can't, there's something wrong with them. And this causes men to be less vulnerable with people in their lives about where they're actually struggling. This was particularly the case for me when I grew up playing sports. I was around men so often and had many incredible moments and experiences working together with men, while at the same time, the deeper issues that I was facing didn't have a place to be expressed. Because if I started to lead with vulnerability, it was very often met with criticism or ridicule, and I'd be made fun of. And that led me to push my challenges and my problems even deeper and not want to talk about it because those environments didn't feel safe. So whether you're in sports or in your broader social circles or in your friend groups where sharing about what's happening in your life leads to social ostracism, that's something to be particularly mindful of, because we need to create spaces for men where they can feel safe, where they can feel seen, where they can recognize that expressing the depth of what's happening in them emotionally is something that can be encouraged and leaned into and celebrated. Men don't want to sit and dwell on their problems. We want to talk about them, we want to bring them up, but then move forward with constructive solutions. But if you're unable to have that place where you can actually share the depth of what's going on, it's hard to actually then grab the reins and take constructive control and move yourself forward in the direction that you actually desire. One of the really common patterns that I observed in sports and in my friend circles is using humor to deflect emotional vulnerability. We get really good at telling a joke or skirting around the issue by using humor. Recognize when you yourself or the people around you are using humor as a shield to deflect something deeper. And when that's within yourself, get curious. And also, when you start to hear that happening with a friend, there's an opportunity there for you to lean in deeper and recognize that they might be deflecting away from something that's a bit more raw, a bit more vulnerable, that they could benefit from sharing. While humor obviously has its place and makes life so much more fun, it can also be something that can cause a deeper disconnection. So notice when you are using humor as a shield rather than as a social lubricant. Another huge cultural shift is the impact of technology and social media. Despite being more connected than we ever have, there's a growing sense of isolation. The more we become passive consumers of social media, the more we can start to experience a fear of missing out and comparisons with our friend groups and other people that we follow. Remaining mindful of our use of technology and social media is critical in this age where algorithms are working against us to capture as much of our attention as possible. We are the commodity when we are using these things, and it's critical to remember that. If this is an opportunity for me to network and meet more people and deepen into connection in more authentic and in-person ways if possible, or if this is something that's actually leaving me feeling more empty and isolated than before I engaged in that thing. To get clearer on how this is showing up for you, you can reference the healthy habits versus the harmful distraction questions that I listed before. Another massive cultural shift that's been happening is the rapid and dramatic decline of male friendships. 1 in 5 men say that they can't even identify one best friend, and the amount of men with 6 connections or more has decreased by over 50% in the last 30 years. And that trend seems to be accelerating. More and more men are lacking inspirational connections and men in their life where they can share the depth of what's alive in them and have an actual support network that can pick them up when they're falling short of where they desire to be, or when they're stuck in their own thought loops, or need some genuine feedback or accountability. There's a gap in these support structures that exist. And I can attest that having strong men who inspire me, who hold me accountable, who offer me valuable feedback has been a total game changer in my life, to feel more confident, to feel more understood, to feel more supported in leading my life in that direction that I desire. It's important to keep a pulse on the close male friendships in our life and check in on those and tend to those. It's far easier to catch this before we lose all of those close friendships than it is to rebuild them from nothing. And what we are seeing in the trends is that some of the most isolated and alone men are those above the age of 50. And those are also the highest number of men that are committing suicide right now. So tend to your close friendships. And if you're recognizing that you might be one of those men who doesn't have anybody in your close circle at all, be mindful of that and recognize that this is the perfect opportunity to start fostering deeper and more meaningful connections with men. The social and cultural shifts that we've been experiencing have also been happening within a broader historical context. Traditionally, we were agrarian societies, and prior to that, hunter-gatherers, which were all very communally focused. Within the last few centuries, there has been a shift into industrialization, which with that brought close-knit rural communities into large inundated cities where that close connection started to melt away. And despite being surrounded by more people, there's a deeper sense of disconnection than ever. And the work hours amplified like crazy, and 40-hour workweek minimums became the norm. The shift to urbanization and migration to cities has increased anonymity within our relationships. More people flooding into cities, but having less connections. Some people don't even know who their neighbors are or what their names are. And there are far fewer spaces where men now come together and gather. Sometimes the only places that there are bars. And this is often gathering around, drinking, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if we're doing so in a repetitive manner where we're seeking to numb, it goes back to that emotional distraction where we'll talk details and dance on the surface, but not create the space and the conditions to be able to actually talk about the depth of what's happening in our lives. And without that, we won't be able to take constructive action forward. Another huge shift that we've seen is the loss of rites of passage and elder mentorship. Traditionally, different cultures had a certain ceremony to help teenage boys be able to be initiated into manhood, a transition that could help mark that stage of life where they step in to take radical ownership and radical responsibility for their lives. And this was often guided by male mentors who have had decades of experience more than these young men and could help offer guidance and support and a sense of direction that they could lean on. And without that, without the proper boundaries, without the proper guidance, without the proper initiations, many men, despite being in full adult bodies, have never moved past the stage of adolescence. Another historical piece is the way our modern culture is advancing. Despite technologies becoming more evolved and advanced than ever, we are busier than ever. There was a promise that these technologies and advancements would bring us more time and more freedom, and yet we're working more than ever. We're more distracted than ever. Our lives are migrated more to screens and digital interactions than ever. And this growing trend towards busyness and digital interactions is eroding our ability to go out and meet new people in the flesh and free up time for play and curious exploration of our own passions, of being of contribution in ways beyond our work. These are critical things that foster a deeper sense of contribution, which help us feel like we are of value, like we're contributing to something bigger. And that is such an antidote to loneliness that we can experience. When somebody asks how we're doing and we reply with busy is just such a wild response. And it's a pattern that I'm trying to break within myself, because I notice that I'm having many balls in the air that I'm trying to juggle, many things that I'm consciously choosing to put on my plate. But I don't want to continue to perpetuate this idea that being busy is some ideal to strive for, or praying at the altar of the God of progress or productivity. This isn't the life that I actually desire to live. I desire connection. I desire a sense of fulfillment or sense of purpose. And I'm becoming increasingly aware that simply being busy or productive is not going to provide that for me. There's obviously many more factors that I didn't cover here, but I wanted to touch on some of those subtle signs of loneliness so that you can identify when that's coming up within you and discuss some of the factors that have been contributing to this so that we can actively address those in our own lives. If any of this resonates with you, don't ignore it. Understanding the signs is the first step to reclaiming connection in our lives. In the next video, we'll explore why loneliness is more dangerous than you think and what you can do to start changing it. If there's a man in your life that you think would benefit from hearing this, please share it with him. And if you enjoyed this content and would like to receive more, hit subscribe, because there'll be more videos talking about similar content and helping you lead a more empowered and fulfilling life. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Stu Murray, and we'll see you next week.